Hi everyone, I'm Dayton from Savvy Within, and I help product managers lead successful careers and thrive at their jobs. So as you can see, today's video is a little bit different, and that's because it's going to be a little bit chatty and conversational. So here's what I did. I asked ChatGPT to generate about 20 controversial, debatable hot takes in product management. I want to give my opinion on each of those debatable hot takes. We might ruffle feathers a bit today, but as long as we're ruffling feathers considerably and respectably, I think that's fine. I might be looking at my iPad or just looking down in front of me every few minutes because I'm picking the hot takes from my iPad here. I haven't gone through any of the generated takes, so I'm going to be encountering them for the first time. And again, if you feel contrary or differently about any opinion, the purpose of this is to actually have a great conversation. So feel free to put in the comment section if you have a different opinion from me. So let's get into it. The first take I have here is product managers should have a technical background to better understand the development process and communicate effectively with engineers. What do I think? I think product managers do not need to have a technical background getting into product management, especially if you work within the software space. You do not need to have a technical background to get into product management. I've seen people that came from the customer success marketing background, and they are doing fantastic at product management. However, I do think that as you continue in your product management practice and you work within the software space, I don't think you actually have to pick up some software or technical skills like understanding of the tech stack that is being used within your product and how those impact your product decisions and things like that, and get hands-on with data because that's also technical, using different tools or even possible some scripts to do some analysis. So I do think as you evolve in your product management practice, very quickly as you get into it, you're going to need to be open to the possibility that you may actually have to be doing some technical stuff, having some technical conversations, and also using software tools and maybe scripts to get things done beyond what you did or knew about when you started your product management practice. So yes, I agree with this thing that product managers do not need to have a technical background to get into it, but shortly after you get into it, you are better off having those technical skills in order to have a solid grounding for your decisions and conversations with your engineering team. So be open to the possibility because you could maneuver your way without the technical skills, but you will be highly limited in what you're doing compared to a product manager that actually has technical skills. The next one I have here is Agile development methodology is overrated and has led to the oversimplification of complex product management process. I know there are some Agile evangelists that might be listening to this. My opinion on this is the whole notion around Agile is flexibility, prioritizing people over processes, not too many documentations and stuff like that. And I think that principle still holds true. The only thing is a lot of people have different opinions about what Agile should be, and you should adapt it to what works within your organization. If you enforce an Agile process where it does not work, then there is no point. So for example, if you say your team should have daily stand-up and it's really not convenient for your teams to have daily stand-up, then it's not convenient. You don't have to enforce some of the Agile ceremonies and principles on a team where it's not really working. So I would say if Agile definitely promotes flexibility, people over processes and all of those principles, then it should work and it should be flexible enough to adapt to the needs of your team or your organization, and you should be open to reviewing and iterating. Some things do not necessarily need to be cookie cutter the way it's been described. You need to adapt a lot of things to how it works within your organization. Should you use Scrum? Should you use Kanban? Well, you should use what works for your team. You probably should use a mixture if a mixture of it works. Again, some people may have an opinion about me saying you should use a mixture of Scrum and Kanban. What works for your team? So is Agile overrated? I think people have made it a bit overrated because some people want to stick to the principles the way it is written in theory or the way it applies in theory without actually considering a lot of context within organizations that may be open for flexibility. Some organizations actually work as a waterfall organization and it works and that's what they need. Then that should be what should happen, not forcing some methodology, iterative development and stuff like that where it does not work. That's my opinion on that. And as it led to oversimplification of complex product management process, I think it helps to simplify complex product management. I don't know about oversimplifying product management processes, because honestly, if you have a complex process, I guess you benefit from simplifying it without actually watering down the complexity of the situation or the processes that you have. So I would say go agile, but actually be agile in the real sense of it. Okay. The third is the prioritization of user feedback can be detrimental to a product's long-term success. Okay, as it may limit innovation and differentiation from competitors. I agree with this, that prioritization of user feedback can be detrimental to long-term success in many cases. And that's because I've seen products that evolved not necessarily because of user feedback, but because they just have a strong indication of this is the direction that the industry is going, and users do not know the direction. Sometimes you just see patterns from what users are doing, but it's not direct feedback from users. So if you rely only on what users are saying they need things just based on the scope of the problem that they have today. But as an organization, as a product organization, you have to be visionary to even be able to anticipate where users may have a problem in the future that they've not encountered. So a typical case people use as an example for this is Apple. Apple defined the pace for user experience and great mobile experience when a lot of us did not even know what we wanted or what we needed. And that's one of the top innovative tech companies in the world today. So I do agree that over prioritizing user feedback may actually solve their problem today, but it may stand in the way of thinking about the future and innovation for problems that people do not even already know that they have. So yes, I agree with that statement. And as a product manager, we are stuck between the balance of meeting the needs of users today and also being able to position our product in a way that is futuristic. Because if you don't have users today that are paying for the problems that they have today, you barely have enough to sustain your research and development to do futuristic, innovative stuff. So you have to actually have a good balance, and your product organization needs to structure the team and the goals in a way that helps you achieve both. Else you solve today's problems and you'd be extinct in the future, or you solve the future's problems today and you don't have funds to actually get to that future. So a good balance is necessary there. Now, the next hot take is the use of data, my most interesting and my favorite product management topic. The use of data analytics in product management has led to an over-reliance on quantitative metrics at the expense of qualitative insight. This is quite subjective, and I believe that this is just solely based on how a product manager or an organization actually uses data. I do believe that data is very powerful, very influential, is a significant part of product decision making. It should not be non-existent. If I could put it that way, I've seen product organization where their data fluency is just extremely low. So data fluency within a product organization and for a product manager is very, very important. I would rather over-reliance on data for decision making than none at all, personally, because at least you have something to go by that we can see. But just vibing on features, I'm not really sure if that's okay. I've barely seen organizations actually where they over-rely on data and less on qualitative. In fact, I see more of the opposite. Over-reliance on qualitative feedback or qualitative data and less reliance on quantitative. That's what I see more often than over-reliance on quantitative data to make product decisions. But the use of data analytics in product management, it could lead to over-reliance on quantitative metrics because you start from somewhere. So you may have a nudge or some form of patterns when you are looking at data, but you probably would use qualitative data to validate the hypothesis that you come up with based on the patterns that you're seeing. So for example, if you see that a lot of your users are doing step A about 70% of the time before they do step B, and there is really no obvious connection between the two in your products, that's quantitative data that tells you there might be something here. And it's your role as a product manager to take that, come up with some form of hypothesis and figure out, how do I validate these hypotheses, or how do I test this with users? Then you may now talk to users and figure out, why is this the case? Let me talk to users to figure out what is the relationship between these two activities that the data is telling us. So as a product manager, you need to have a good balance of both. Start from somewhere, maybe the patterns you're observing within the qualitative analysis, and then you may use some qualitative analysis to validate. You can also start from the reverse. If your customers are indicating something, go to the data and verify, like, okay, is this that much of a problem based on what users are saying? So a good balance between both, I think, is the sweet spot here. But I do think it's easier to over-rely on qualitative metrics, or qualitative insights, because it's much easier to come up with stuff out of nowhere. That's just the truth. Okay. The next hot take I have here says, product managers should be more involved in the sales process to better understand customer needs and improve the product's market fit. Okay, so I'm going to say this from the point of view of someone that is not really a fan of marketing and sales. Honestly, I'm not a fan. I'm not the best at it. So do know that my response is coming with a bias. So should product management be more involved in the sales process and better to understand customer needs? I say yes. The role of the product manager is to take the user needs, the user feedback, the user patterns and problems and behaviors, look at that alongside the business goal, what we're trying to achieve, what is important to the business, and then what is technically feasible, and come up with something that benefits the user, that the user can pay for, that the business meets their goals. But if you do not rely on the sales and the customer success teams and the customer-facing teams generally to get your user insight, then how are you getting your user insights? That's the question. A lot of product managers, work in isolation and say, oh, I want to conduct the user interviews. And I'll be like, have you talked to the sales team or the customer success team to actually find high-quality users? So yes, product managers should be more involved in the sales process. You should also be more involved because when you build your product, the sales process sells the product. So if you're not involved in the sales process and how the sales process helps to deliver the product into the hands of the users, or helps to find the users that are best fit for your product, and again, to come up with the product market fit, I think you're maybe losing valuable opportunity. A strong collaboration between sales/CS team or support team, engineering team, design, and a product manager is very, very significant for you to achieve product market fit and also get very high quality customer feedback. The next hot take here is the trend towards flat organizational structures in product management can lead to confusion and a lack of accountability. I would not say I'm aware of this trend, or maybe I'm deep into it that I don't know that it's a new thing. I disagree with this statement because I do not think it's the trend towards flat structures. I just think it's an organization culture thing. You could have a flat organization structure and still have accountability. That's my point. So I don't think that a lack of accountability is just as a result of the flat organization structure. I think lack of accountability is a problem of lack of accountability. You will see organizations that have very hierarchical org structures that are not flat, and people are still not accountable. If anything, it's very easy to lack accountability with an organization because you can get away with things and there are people that overlap to do things. So I don't agree with that statement. I feel like the lack of accountability in any space is just a cultural problem, is an organization problem, and it doesn't necessarily have to be because of a flat organizational structure. That's just what I think about that. The next take here is the current emphasis on rapid product development and iteration has led to the neglect of product maintenance and support, leading to a high rate of product abandonment. So the TLDR of this, a lot of product managers like to iterate and experiment and just do quick iterations and put things out there. This hot take says that has led to neglect of maintenance and support and just a lot of abandonment. I know a very popular tech company that a lot of us think that they just build products and abandon. It's Google. Let me not just... They have so many abandoned products, and some people say that's because, a new product manager is here, they want to be the new superstar, they release something very fast, and then they just get their accolades and they move on from the organization. That may be a thing. I think rapid development and iteration is very important. A product manager needs to be able to quickly test things and put it in the market and figure out, does it stick? Does it address the highest risk that I think this feature has? I'd see a possibility of people to get into that habit of just rapidly developing and putting things out and trying and experimenting and abandoning things. So maybe it's good to say that I agree with that statement, because it's very easy to iterate, put it in the market, abandon, and say, yeah, it didn't work. I think that the abandonment is actually less of the problem, because the whole idea about rapid development is to be able to abandon things if it's not working. The bigger problem I see in this statement is the neglect of support. If you're abandoning a feature or an iteration, actually properly decommission and abandon it. Don't create clutter that could look like we're not supporting. How we abandon is the problem. It's live and just hanging there and becomes an additional thing for the team to maintain and support. But if you decide an experiment or an iteration is not doing the thing that you expect it to do, I think you should properly decommission, turn off the service, wrap it in a nice bow and take it out of the, keep it away from the need to support it. So I think I agree with this statement. As product manager, I think the lesson here is for us to also be able to draw a line. Let the development team know we're not maintaining this service anymore, and let them actually have the proper, I'll call it offboarding, whatever process to transition out of supporting. This is also one of the areas where I think that the engineering leadership can actually call the product team out and check them here, because the engineering team is also always very invested in how do we support this? How do we maintain this? What does this mean going forward? So if a product manager comes up with some random iteration and say, oh, we want to test this in the market, the engineering team actually has to also be able to hold the product managers and product management team accountable to their iterations and releases and say, okay, what's the plan? At what point are we going to agree that this thing is not doing what you need it to do, so that we can actually draw a line and know that, okay, we're no longer supporting this service, or we've already transitioned and evolved this service into something else. So we need to actually think of a longer sustainable plan for supporting this. So this is one area where I think the engineering leadership actually needs to also take product managers seriously and hold them accountable to not just churning out iterations and experiments, but thinking about how do we maintain and support or decommission this once we are done with it. That's my take on that. Next take is MVPs, which is minimum viable products. If you don't know what it is, are often not viable enough and can harm a product's reputation. I do agree with this 100%. Honestly, there's a style, there's an art to coming up with MVPs. A lot of people have put things out there about how to know what feature set to include in your MVP. There's the bicycle, scooter, car, and lorry illustration. That's a very popular illustration that an MVP should actually be functional. It should have the right level of the design consideration, have the right level of technical security consideration, have the right level of functionality. It should not just be more functionality. There's that analogy. There is also the analogy of, okay, what is the biggest risk that we're trying to address from this hypothesis, and how do we put out something that validates our assumption or tests this risk? There is that as well. But I think not everybody knows how to come up with an MVP. It sounds very easy, like just put something there out to test. Some people overinvest in the MVP, and a lot of people probably underinvest. And once data starts coming in, that's when you realize that it actually wasn't viable enough to test our hypothesis or to address our assumptions, or it's just giving us too much or more than we need to do. So I think that a lot of MVPs are not viable enough. Could they harm the product's reputation? It depends on how it is message and how it is released. It's not only the MVP feature set alone that impacts the product reputation, but again, you could also do like, oh, we're releasing it to a close group of users that we have a bit of reputation with. It's not just random strangers that are seeing the MVP and think that that's the idea of our product all by itself. The way in which MVPs are released could also impact the product's reputation. So it's not just the feature set. I would say it's everything that is around deciding what is the MVP, who are we releasing it to, how are we releasing it, what do we do with the release that could actually harm the product reputation. So maybe I agree to a certain degree, but I don't think it's just about the MVP by itself. I think it's just the process and the system around how you deliver the MVP. Next take, the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning in product management can lead to the loss of human creativity and intuition. To be quite frank, there's a lot of AI going on. It's interesting that an AI machine generated this prompt for me, which I'm, grateful for. I didn't have to think about what it takes or start doing research online, which I don't know. Was that loss of creativity on my part? Maybe not. But I think I could easily do it if I wanted to. It didn't reduce the creativity for me. I think it just saved me time. So artificial intelligence and machine learning, yeah, they can be time savers, but I'm not sure about the loss of creativity and intuition, because what this just tells me is that there'll be a higher level of expectation of creativity and intuition from humans. So for example, case in point, these prompts are generated. I didn't have to expend my creative energy trying to come up with hot takes that I could just have Googled. Now I'm expending my creative energy thinking about these takes themselves and how we affect work and product management. So I disagree with this statement. Yes, just means it places a different demand on product managers for creativity and intuition. And so far, so good. What I'm seeing with artificial intelligence, honestly, they are not that creative and intuitive. Let me be frank. They are great, as far as I'm concerned, at maybe initial idea generation and synthesizing information. But I don't think artificial intelligence and machine learning is great at coming up with creative ideas. I haven't seen any creative idea that an AI system has generated. It's just synthesizing what people have done already in the past. So I strongly disagree with this statement. And this basically applies to everything. It's not just product management. That's what I think about that. Okay, so the next take is similar to the one I did just before this, and that is the practice of shipping and iterating has led to the culture of constant change, causing confusion and frustration for users. Now, this is looking at the idea of, let's say, MVP or quickly iterating. What does that mean from the user's point of view? I doubt it. If you're building the same products, your vision is clear, your goals are clear, and you are shipping and iterating very fast within the confines of the vision and the product. I'm not sure how that could lead to confusion and frustration. Okay, maybe it could lead to frustration because you may have half-baked features, like the case where I described earlier about MVPs not really being MVP. Maybe it's not functional enough, or maybe it's not technically sound enough, or maybe it's not secure enough, and that could frustrate users. So yes, that from that angle, I do agree that, just shipping and iterating fast can lead to you having half-baked features. There is that. And if you cannot already tell, the product management camp of ship it, iterate it, let's validate, let's test, let's figure it out. But there has to be some science and some reasonability that comes into what you ship and how you iterate fast, right? So a lot of experimental and very quick and iterative product managers need to actually take care to slow down and say, am I just shipping fast because I want to ship fast? Or can I give this an extra week to make sure that the feature is actually solid enough where it doesn't frustrate my users? So I've been in such situations where I put a hard deadline for my team and say, we're getting this out in 2 sprints. We're getting this out in a week. Can we strip as many things as possible? But there are some non-negotiable rules. I'll say, no, we're not stripping it out. If we have to strip this out, then I'll rather take 2 more days or 3 more days to make sure that this is part of it, because this will compromise on the user experience and frustrate our users. So I agree that yes, it has led to a culture of constant change, which frustrates users. The next take. A/B testing is overused and can lead to missed opportunities for innovation. Wow. So I'm actually calling myself out on this because the number of times where I don't even know how users will receive something and I'll just be like, yeah, we can A/B test that. And I think, A/B test it can be very overused because it can just be like the catch-all. Like, I don't know, let's just A/B test it. Or, okay, which would users prefer? We have 2 options. I don't know, let's just A/B test it. And it works, you can A/B test and get results. Is it overused? I can't say for sure because I don't have the general industry stats, but I think people throw around A/B tests a lot. And I don't think that is a bad thing. I would rather you throw around A/B tests a lot versus have a very strong indication on designs or features or flows without any basis, right? So is it overused? I can't say for sure. Can it lead to missed opportunities for innovation? I don't see how, honestly. Maybe the way it can lead to missed opportunities for innovation is like solely relying on the results of your A/B tests and not being creative around something else that the test did not show you. That might be a way, but I do feel like those opportunities will probably come up in some other way, and it's not an A/B test problem. Again, I think the A/B test will do what the A/B test is supposed to do. If your team is missing out on opportunities for innovation, that's not an A/B test problem. That is probably a product practice or organization or a skill problem of the product team. So I don't think we can solely base that on A/B testing. Okay, the next take here is this is also an interesting one. Too much emphasis is placed on product roadmaps and should be abandoned altogether. I'm a product manager, but I agree with the first half of that statement. Too much emphasis is placed on product roadmap. I do hear it, sometimes, people stick to roadmaps and I'll be like, roadmap is such a commitment that I don't know what this could evolve to in the next 6 months. doing a 2-year roadmap, a 1-year roadmap. I'm not a fan of that, honestly. So I think I've seen a lot of people focus so much on roadmaps. I've seen people be so nitpicky about roadmaps, and they will have roadmaps that are so clean. Honestly, if your roadmap is so clean and precise, I just think that you're not flexible enough. And again, I'm not saying be too flexible where any and everything can be developed, but I'm saying your roadmap should not be a full commitment. I think it should be this is what we have in mind, but this could change. I've seen people nitpick on roadmap so much, they'll be like, okay, if something that we plan to do, we change our mind, then remove it from the roadmap. I'm like, the idea of the roadmap is just to give an idea of what we might be looking at now, next, or later. It's not a Bible of gospel truths. That's just it. Because by the time you're really doing serious product management, you'll be like, this roadmap could evolve or change depending on some of the user feedback. A product roadmap can only be very, very clean and precise if you're a very waterfall organization or team, where we'll do this and then this will do. Like, you're not giving yourself an opportunity to iterate or evolve and get feedback on what you release and say, actually, it's not doing that well. Maybe we need to think about things slightly differently, So yeah, I do think that a lot of people place emphasis on product roadmaps that they need to take. But I don't think products should be abandoned altogether. That's why I said I agree with the first half of this statement. I do not agree with the second half, because you don't abandon a roadmap altogether. I just think working around the kinks and how you communicate your roadmap and what the expectations are in an organization about roadmap needs to just be clearer and more flexible. You should have a roadmap about this is the current position of where we see ourselves evolving this product or this feature in the next couple of weeks or months. They should be framed as, we could get to this next, and this next, and this next, and potentially this next, and something else that may not be on this roadmap. This is a 50-50. I agree with the first half, and the second half, I don't agree. It should not be abandoned altogether. That's my take on that. Product managers should have a final say on product design, not designers and developers. Wow, people will roast me for this one. I can almost tell. Now, I think it depends. If a product manager, and I'm saying a solid product manager that has a considerable level of knowledge of design, engineering, sales, CS, marketing, you kind of have everything, like a good, more than average understanding of all of this. I think you should have a very good influence on the design. You shouldn't hands off the design to the product designer, like, okay, you design it and you hands off. You should be able to come to the designer from the point of view of, I'm an independent person that did not design it. This is my take on your design. And the designer should also be able to take in your feedback, as they should take everybody's feedback. But I think a product manager should have a strong influence on the product design more than every other person else. I don't think that engineering team or developer should have a final say on the design. Nope, I disagree. They should have a final say on the technical aspect, but they should be able to contribute and influence the design. For example, if a design is going to require some engineering that doesn't exist, like maybe some filters or some information that technically they cannot make available for the design to come to life, then they should be able to draw the lines there and say, look, this is the limitation of this design. This is what your design is going to introduce. Product manager, are you game with us going this route just to bring this design to life? Or is there an alternative way to do what you're trying to do without us going this route? Because this is the cost of this design, period. Engineers should be able to influence that and make it clear. That's where I now think that the product manager has a lot more influence beyond the engineers on the design. That's where the engineering team comes in. But not necessarily, the button should be green. But then the product manager comes from point of view of, is this design so important that I can pay this cost that the engineering team is bringing to me? Like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Because if the designer has the final say, then how do they decide on the cost? So the product manager actually ultimately decides. That point, the product manager has the final say. So yes, I think I've come around to agree with this statement that the product manager should have the final say on the product design, because there is a cost to design which the product manager has to agree to. So if your designer says, well, I believe that this is the most impactful design that will get this thing done, if it's too expensive to put that design in place, then the product manager has to actually say, unfortunately, we can't do this. Then we need to find a different way, or we need to find a different design that achieves the result because we cannot pay the cost of it. So I think I've come around to agree with this. Yeah. And again, this is not me saying that designers should not be able to design whatever they like. But what I'm saying is, even if they design whatever they like and think supports the goals we're trying to achieve, the product manager needs to understand the cost of that design and agree to the cost of that design. Interesting. So 2 more to go. Feature prioritization should be based solely on data and metrics, not intuition and user feedback. No, I disagree. Because I think I'm saying this from looking at a point of view like data and metrics. This is assuming that your data and metrics has a very high degree of accuracy. But again, similar to what I said earlier, right? There might be some level of creativity and intuition that some people do have to say and predict problems that users don't even know that they have already. So I don't think you should be based on data and metrics solely or not on intuition or user feedback. I think it's a mix of both. You also need to know, am I designing this feature for now or for the future or for the next 15 years, or this is something that is going to significantly change our strategy, right? When you're thinking about things from that point of view, then it's not just data and metrics, right? Data and metrics can be used to validate, can be used to generate questions and patterns, but in terms of prioritizing features, somehow you probably also need to rely on user feedback and intuition. Sometimes some people just have this intuition that honestly, you need to trust and just hope for the best. Let me say it that way. Again, this is not diminishing the importance of data and metrics. You should actually even also let the person, or if your intuition is telling you to go in a different direction, let them be aware of the data and the metrics and what you're seeing, and that all of that comes into your decision. So that whoever is having the intuition, at least one as well do an MVP or test or stuff like that, if that's the way we want to go. We also say this thing as if you're in an organization where a CEO cannot just say this is the feature that I want without any form of data and metric. That happens in the real world. And sometimes, even if you present a CEO or a VP of product with some data and some metrics, and they'll be like, yeah, I get it, but this is what I strongly believe is the direction that we should be going. Just because I don't have the data to prove it doesn't mean that we're not right. And sometimes you're just going to have to fall in line. But, have all those edge cases where you can test that intuition very quickly, or find data to back up that intuition at least to a certain degree, or know where to draw the line and say, this is not really working. So I don't agree with the statements. Feature prioritization is totally on data and metrics. There should be qualitative feedback and even intuition here. Intuition is like everybody's jumping on the AI bandwagon now, but someone should actually tell me how this time last year they all had this whole AI idea. Do you understand? So I think intuition is also like there might be ways for you to solve a problem, for example, without using AI. But there's nothing in the data and metrics that is maybe telling you guys to go ahead with AI. You just want to jump on the trend so that you want to slam it on your marketing collateral and say, oh, AI powered XYZ. So those are cases where you don't always have to rely on data and metrics. You may not have the data and metrics to prove that the direction that you're going, honestly. It's just, this is what the market is asking for from what we can see. Nothing really to back it up that it should go this way. Okay. And lastly, product managers should have a strong understanding of psychology to create more effective products. I totally disagree. And the reason why I disagree with is if we actually require product managers to have an understanding of like adjacent or a strong understanding of adjacent skills to build effective products, to what degree, to what end? Because psychology might impact your design and the experience around it. A product designer should probably be the one to have a bit of understanding of psychology, maybe not the product manager. The product manager should just know what is good user experience. In my opinion, I don't think they should really understand psychology to that degree. But I think for design, psychology is an important aspect of design, which a product designer should probably have way more understanding of psychology in order to build effective designs versus a product manager. So I don't agree with this statement. I know that some product managers that have a little bit of understanding of psychology, like general human psychology of colors, psychology of human behavior, I think it helps. But I don't know that the product manager should have a strong understanding of psychology, because that's taking it too far, in my own opinion. Anyway, those are all the hot takes, and those are my opinions about those hot takes. I'm not sure of how many I went through because I literally just generated everything from ChatGPT. Now, let me know if you guys have a contrary opinion. And guess what? I could come back tomorrow and say, actually, I was wrong. I think differently about these things now. So feel free to let me know in the comment section what you guys think. If you disagree with me, let's have a healthy debate. I could change my mind. I'm not necessarily stuck on any of these ideas. So that's it for today. If this was very fun and insightful for you, share this with your product manager friends, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.